Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Somebody asked me one time, how can I tell a Muslim? What does a Muslim look like? I wish you could stand where I'm standing because this is what a Muslim look like. None of you look the same. The actions of a Muslim should be what a Muslim looks like. We are not a racial group. We are a group who believes in a set of responsibilities if we're honest about what those responsibilities are. But we have allowed ourselves to be defined and we are fearful of that definition. Just like I was when I did not want to bring a food sandwich to school. We are fearful of what they will think about us. But my mom's right. You can't ask others to believe in you unless you believe in yourself. So we have an opportunity in front of us if we're willing to move past those obstacles. And that opportunity is to embrace the responsibilities that come with our faith. Those are not just internal responsibilities. It doesn't mean that you just pray and fast, that you don't drink alcohol, that you don't eat pepperoni, and khalas, you're a good Muslim. No. Ask young people today, what does it mean to be Muslim? Very rarely can they tell you what you do. They can tell you what you don't do. I'm Muslim, so I don't eat pepperoni. I'm Muslim, so I don't smoke and I don't drink and I don't date. Ask them what it means to be Muslim. What do Muslims do in the world? Rarely will they tell you, I'm somebody who commands for justice. I'm somebody who stands up for the weak. I'm somebody who tells the truth, even if it's against myself. We have to embrace what it means to be Muslim in this world. And so when we talk in this unique political moment, and I don't want to take away from the fact that this is a unique political moment. I was talking to the organizers and I was like, why are both of the speakers here dudes? And they're like, because all the women won. They've actually got work to do. We will watch historic times. In next month, we will watch not one, but two Muslim American women with their hands on a Quran, swearing an oath to the Constitution of these United States of America. That is a special thing. And I don't want to take anything away from that. But those aren't just wins for Muslims. They should not just be wins for Muslims. Why? Because while representation does matter, it's not enough. It's about the work. It's about what happens. It's about whether or not their winning has created a more just, a more equitable, a more sustainable America for all of us. That's what this is about. If we're celebrating simply that Muslims got elected to office, then all we've done is stuck ourselves in the same racialized category they want to put us in. But if we can point to that moment and the moments that come after it, the moment that came before it, that created it, if we can point to that moment and say, this is a moment that bent the arc of the moral universe towards justice, then we can celebrate. But that work doesn't end. That work keeps on going. It's not enough just to show up when you're winning. It's about showing up every day in the places big and small that we occupy. I was asked also to just talk about some learnings. What is it that we can do moving forward? Number one, who here voted in the last election? If you're under the age of 18, just put your hands up, because I know you wanted to. Put your hands up if you voted. All right, I see some hands that are not up. All right, congratulations to you. You did the civic equivalent of showing up to class. Thank you. How many of you volunteered for a candidate? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you donated to a candidate? Raise your hands. Okay, a little bit better. If you want an A in your class, it's not just enough to show up to the class. Voting is just showing up. A lot of us, right, we get real high and mighty, go out and vote, it's important, it's your voice. Of course it is. Why would you ever pay for a class and not show up? Why would you ever pay your taxes and not show up to make decisions about the people who get to make those decisions about where your tax dollars go? It's just showing up. It's not enough just to show up. We've got to move forward beyond just showing up and decide that we are going to be A+ civic students. What does that mean? It means time, it means energy, it means money. It means investing in the kind of outcomes that you want to see electorally. One of the things I was proudest of is, yes, people showed up to vote on election day in Michigan in that primary, and I'm deeply thankful for them. But more importantly, people showed up with their dollars, whether it was $2 or $5 or $1,000, and people showed up to knock doors, to have civic conversations. The second thing is that if we want a future we can believe in, we've got to keep investing in institutions that build that future. One of the most frustrating things in the world, and I'll be honest with you, is when people get real excited about building another masjid. We don't need another masjid. A big dome that everybody looks at and says, hey, Muslims are here, awesome. Doesn't mean anything. We're taught in our faith that the face, the look of someone is not who they are, it's what's in their heart. How many people are filling up that masjid? More importantly, what is that masjid doing to build the kind of space that actually moves forward those ideals that this faith was built on in the first place? It's not enough just to build brick and mortar institutions. We've got to build people. And that's the third point. We, in our community, have this doublespeak. And that doublespeak goes something like this. Why are they revising our history? Why aren't they telling our side of the story? If my kid doesn't go to medical school, they'll have failed. If you want your story told, tell your story. They say, until the lion learns to speak, the tales of hunting will be weak. We've got to stand up and tell our own story. That means we've got to train our people to be storytellers. We've got to train our historians and our journalists and yes, our politicians. We cannot continue to think that the world is going to change and we're going to be able to do the work that we have to do when we keep telling our kids that the only thing they can do is go to med school and maybe be an engineer. And if you can't do that, maybe go to law school. Anything else, bust, you're not going to get married. There's this idea talked about in the Quran, khashyatu imlaq. The fear that money's not going to come to you, that you're not going to be made whole. How many of us make decisions professionally out of that? Too many. Too many. Number 4. When I ran, you better believe we got some hatred. It's the world we live in. I was at a church in a place called Downriver in Michigan. Anybody from Michigan knows where Downriver is. And in Downriver, it's a largely white working class community. And I had finished speaking at this church, and this woman, her name was Sally, and I could only tell because she had one of those "Hello, my name is" stickers on her chest. And Sally was like 75. It looked like Shirley Temple had aged. And rather than come and ask me a question like most people do, Sally just put her hand on my face. She said, "Son, are you listening to me?" I said, "Sally, you've got your hand on my face. Of course I'm listening to you." She said, "Son, you've got a nice smile, and I hope you use it. Because there are going to be a lot of people who hate you. But it's really hard to hate somebody who's smiling at you." Where have you heard that advice before? Our Prophet ﷺ tells us to smile, it's sadaqah. That idea of leading with good character is the idea of simply smiling at somebody when you see them, being kind to them, asking how their day is going and actually meaning it. Standing up with people when they are put down. That's what character is. Sally had just reminded me something that my Prophet ﷺ had taught me long, long ago. If we stick to the principles of who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to be in the world, it is the best thing to cut through that hatred. And so many times I use that advice. People would come up to me and start screaming and I would just smile at them. And they'd look and be like, "Why is this guy smiling? I'm yelling. He should be mad." Let me tell you something about hate. Hate is 2 things. Hate is fear and hate is ignorance. The way to respond to fear is not anger. All you do is drive the fear. Smile. Be kind. Treat people with respect. Take that idea of prophetic character, bake it into who you are. And the last point, number 5, I want to leave you with, is that there is something profoundly powerful about faith itself. Faith itself is recognizing that you do not control the outcomes. Both Abdul Nasser and I, we lost elections. I had never failed that publicly before. We lost our elections. Earned 340,000 votes, alhamdulillah, but lost. And the thing about it is that I could look at that experience and say, what a failure, what a loss. But in the end, it was not mine to control in the first place. All we do is the work. And the point that I want to leave you with is that oftentimes if you're going to engage this work, Don't tie yourself to outcomes. Tie yourself to the work. That's all you can do. And if we engage those things, we build our people up, we remember our own message, we build the institutions that we need, we do more than just show up, but we give of our time and our energy, and we remember that our responsibility is not just us, our responsibility is justice. That is what is founded in our founding documents. I know that we will continue to succeed. But it's going to mean that everybody decides to do the work. What you're seeing here, what you see with Rashida and Ilhan, all you see is the tip of the iceberg. We need the rest of the iceberg. And that's work that all of us do in our own communities. And we should do it because it's our responsibility to our country, our responsibility to our faith. Those things are not mutually exclusive. Whatever anybody wants to tell you, in fact, they reinforce each other, if we're willing to embrace it. Jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakumullahu khairan for your wise words. Just a reminder before we move on to the next speaker that we have volunteers walking up and down the aisles with cards for questions. So we'll have a Q&A session afterwards. Our next speaker is a native of Chicago and Cook County. Abdelnasser Rashid came within 1% of defeating the chairman of the Republican Party in his campaign for Cook County Commissioner. Please join me in welcoming this native Chicagoland speaker to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Abdul Rahman is always a very tough act to follow. Let me tell you a quick story. When we were coming up with the arrangement for the speakers today, I was supposed to go first, and I gladly volunteered because I know that he's always hard to go after. I've gotten to know him well in the last few months, and mashallah, he is masterful. Sorry, is this better? Can you hear me now? So I'm Abdelnasser Rashid. As the organizer said, I ran for Cook County Commissioner here in the 17th District of Cook County. Yes. Okay. So I ran against the chairman of the Cook County Republican Party in a district that goes, for those who know Chicago and the suburbs, in a district that goes from Orland Park in the south all the way up to Des Plaines. It has about 250,000 registered voters. I was born here in Chicago. My parents moved to the U.S. 52 years ago from a village around near Ramallah called Turmusaya. They came in the 60s from a place that didn't have many economic opportunities. All right, I hope this is better. I'm gonna have to put my mouth pretty close. My parents came from a village where there weren't really economic opportunities or educational opportunities if you were a woman. And they were among the first in their family to send their daughters to college. I grew up helping my mom run a booth at the local flea market. I was helping my dad with a small business that he ran. And they worked incredibly hard over decades to enter the middle class. They worked low-wage jobs. My dad worked in the kitchen of Cook County Hospital. He worked on a TV assembly line, manufacturing TVs. And basically saved up a little bit of money, pulled it with his brother, opened a small business, and over a long period of time ended up making it into the middle class so that he could provide a life for his children. And they emphasized education, and I was fortunate enough to go to Harvard, where I had a passion for public service. I spent my summers working at nonprofits. I took a semester off in 2008 to help President Obama get elected, and then after I graduated, I came back home to Chicago, where I worked for a few years in the immigrant rights movement. And I worked on a number of campaigns, and for the last 3 years, I served as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Cook County Clerk David Orr, who some of you may know. He's been a champion for working families here for the last 30 years in the Chicago area. So when I saw the opportunity for the 2018 elections come up, I basically thought about, is this something that I want to do? And I saw the opportunity to run for commissioner as a way for me to translate my experiences, my passion for justice and for fairness into the work of this office. Abdul Rahman, mashallah, ran for governor of Michigan. A lot of people don't know what a Cook County commissioner does, and I had to explain that on the campaign. So Cook County is the 19th largest government in the United States. It has 5 million residents. It has close to a $6 billion budget, over 20,000 employees. And it's responsible for administering healthcare. It's responsible for administering the criminal justice system and the property tax system, forest preserves, economic development, transportation, very critical functions in government. And the 17 commissioners are the lawmakers. Just as you have the lawmakers in Springfield or in Washington, D.C., you have 17 commissioners who make the laws for Cook County. The guy I was running against is the chairman of the Republican Party in the most Republican district of the 17. There were 4 Republican commissioners and 13 Democratic commissioners, and I took on the guy who had the parts of Cook County as far away from Chicago as you can get, where a Democrat, let alone a Democrat named Abdul El-Sayed, should stand no chance, right? I was told I was crazy. I was told, are you kidding? You're going to run and you're going to get clobbered, right? And alhamdulillah, on November 6th, we got 49.3% of the vote. Out of 120,000 votes, I lost by about 1,300 votes. So if 700 had flipped, that would have been the difference to put us over the edge. So we got 49.3%. They had repeatedly, my opponent and I think pundits in general had said this was going to be a race that's lost by double digits. This would be a double-digit loss. And so I wanted to share with you a few takeaways from this. The first one is, you can run without changing who you are. I was told change your name, shave your beard, wear sunscreen and a hat because you can't get any darker. No joke. I was told wear sunscreen and a hat because you can't get any darker if you want this overwhelmingly white district to vote for you. Needless to say, I didn't accept those suggestions. And in fact, if I had and we had gotten 49% of the vote, the message would have been, oh, you only got so close because you basically ran away from your identity, right? So alhamdulillah, we were able to get this close and to show that we can win this in the future. I was Abdul El-Nasser Rashid on the ballot, not even Ahmed, Abdul El-Nasser. And all of the mail that we sent out from the campaign, our videos had my family on it. My wife Fida is here, so they had Fida in hijab and our daughters on the mailers and on any campaign materials that we produced. So we were a visibly Muslim family. I was a visibly Muslim candidate running for this position, and we still nearly knocked off the chairman of the party. So that's one lesson. And Abdul Rahman took the questions from me about who voted and who volunteered. I want to ask, who has considered or is considering running for office? Raise your hand. Good. There are more than a handful of hands up. And so I want you to know, when you go to the political experts, when you go to some of the establishment folks, when you talk to people who are supposed to know what it's like to run, they're going to tell you that you, in fact, I had a woman who's running a hijabi woman who's running for office here in Illinois tell me she told me that she was told she couldn't wear her hijab and run for office and win. And she said, the fact that you got so close in an area where I'm going to run makes me know, it shows me that I can run with my hijab and actually succeed. So you're going to be told that you can't do it. Don't listen to those folks who tell you to change who you are. That's one lesson. The next lesson, and Abdul Rahman touched on this a little bit, is representation matters. And the reason that it matters is because just like any community, people vote when they have folks who understand their concerns, who look like them, who sound like them. The most important criteria for anyone who you're supporting is what they stand for, what their values are. It also matters that you have people who understand the concerns that you and your family are facing. When African Americans run for office, more African Americans vote. When Latino candidates run for office, more Latinos vote. Our community is no different. We need more Muslims to run for office in order to actually energize and activate our community. It's an age-old question, how do we get Muslims to vote, right? I mean, anyone who's participated in those conversations going back years, and I've been around those tables many times, and how do we activate our community? Why are we voting at such low numbers? This is one obvious reason, is why should we go out to vote? And I think there are many reasons to go out to vote. I don't think there are any excuses. But when you have people from your own community running, you are going to be much more likely to vote. In 2014, the last gubernatorial election that we had, so the most similar one to 2018, in my district, in the 17th district, less than 25% of the Muslims and Arabs in the district voted. Less than 25%. We doubled that this year. We looked at the numbers, and alhamdulillah, we actually doubled it. And that's not unusual. My friend Teresa Ma ran for state representative here. She's the first Chinese American representative in the Illinois General Assembly. And when she ran in 2014, I believe, she quadrupled the number of Chinese American voters in some precincts, quadrupled, right? This is not an unusual phenomenon, but we need to know that our community is like every other minority community, that we need to incentivize them to go out and vote. One really important way to do that is to have more people from our community going out and voting. So we doubled that number. However, let me share one more number. So we went from 23% in 2014 to 46% this year in the 17th district, still shy of the 52% average in the district. So we have work to do, right? I'm proud that we doubled it. That's a major accomplishment. At the same time, we've got plenty of work to do to get our community's numbers up. And particularly in a place like Illinois, where we have over 500,000 Muslims and we can impact local and statewide races, it's absolutely doable. But what we also did, and this is really important in terms of our work on the ground, relationships are the most important way to actually get people to go out and vote. We had dozens, hundreds of volunteers, including many young students, Muslim men and women in hijab, going out knocking on doors in our community and across the district. And yes, that's effective. But what we did is we built a family and friends program. Some of you may have heard of this, where you actually have a volunteer tell you who are the 20 or 30 people who they know who are going to get, who they're going to be responsible for getting out to vote. In our family and friends program, we had 70% turnout. 70% turnout. And I'm going to get to this in a second in terms of next steps and the organization that I'm working on. One thing that we're committed to doing is really building this family and friends program, because there's nothing more effective, and this is true wherever you are. Relationships are the most effective way to get people to actually take an action. So I share this because it's important for us to know, if you are interested, if you're working in an organization or you're having conversations about civic engagement in our community, please make sure that you understand that we need more folks from our community actually running for office. The other lesson is that this work takes time, right? It's a myth that you can simply change people's behavior overnight. Again, anywhere, you're not going to have someone. Voting is a behavior. And to get someone in the habit of voting, it's not going to happen over 1 or even 2 election cycles. It takes time. My first election was the first election I participated in, worked on, was back in 2008 for Obama campaign in Michigan. I was the field organizer for Dearborn, and that's where I got to know Rashida. So 10 years ago, I was deployed to Dearborn, Michigan. Rashida had won her primary and was about to win the general election, and we got to work together really closely. And in the 10 years since then, I've gone back to Michigan a few times to help her on her re-election. After she was redistricted in 2012 to run against another incumbent, an African American in a predominantly African American district, she ended up winning by about 600 votes there, before losing her state Senate race after that, and then running for Congress and winning, right? And this is a common story. You ask anyone, ask Luis Gutierrez, who was someone who supported me, and when the day after the election, he calls and he goes, Abdelnasser, I want you to not give up. We have, he goes, I think he exaggerated. He told me he lost 33 elections. I don't think he ran in 33 elections, but his point was that he had lost many aldermanic and local elections before actually becoming an alderman and then running successfully for Congress. And so for me, I've been doing this work for about 10 years. This was, of course, my first election, but it really does take time for us to be effective in this work, and this is why building institutions is absolutely critical, because that's how we make sure that this work is sustainable. And then we need to develop leaders. One of the things I'm most proud of that came out of our campaign was there were many young leaders who, mashallah, gained experience and got to see the political process firsthand. But there were two in particular, Sufyan and Nadia, who came in relatively fresh to the political process, incredibly talented people, very smart, very effective, but relatively new to politics. And after 5 or 6 months of grueling work, campaigns are tough. If you've worked on a campaign or if you've been a candidate, you know how intense they are, right? You basically put everything else on hold, and this is your life for the period of the campaign. And that's true for staff as well. And so after this 5 or 6 months of intensity on the campaign, they are now helping many candidates run for office all over Illinois, right? When they first started, they were learning the ropes. Now they are among the experts here who are doing this work. And these are two leaders that have come out of the campaign. Inshallah, we need to develop many more of them through other campaigns in the next few years. So I want to just go from there to, for us, a lot of the day after the election, the other question that people said is, what's next? Look, you got 49.3%. We know that people often lose their first election. How do we not let this momentum die? What are we doing from here? And my question was, well, what do you have in mind, right? Give me some ideas. And I also said, will you have skin in the game, right? If you were a volunteer or if you're just someone who voted, I said, will you give some of your time? Right? Can I get you on some weekends to come knock on doors or make phone calls? Right? And for the donors, I said, will you commit to donating to help keep this work going? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. And so we launched Empower Southwest, a PAC that's devoted to building the work of our campaign, building on the work of the campaign in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. And I mentioned our Family and Friends program. How do we take the nearly 1,000 people who we turned out 70% of to become 10,000? In the next year or two, right? Because if you can guarantee a vote, this is what we call a voter block, right? If you can guarantee 70% turnout or 60% turnout from a group of 10,000 people in a very narrow geographic area, that's real power. That decides state representative races, that decides state senate races, that could decide a congressional race. And in fact, earlier this year, Marie Newman lost her race to Dan Lipinski by just 2,000 votes. Right, 2,000 votes in an entire congressional district. So we have the ability in the southwest suburbs, and this is true for different pockets where we're concentrated throughout the country, to really build these voter blocks, but it's tough work. It takes institutions, it takes people who've done this work and who know how to build it and maintain it, right? So that's one thing we're doing. We have a group of over 600 volunteers who came in out of the campaign, particularly young students, college students, students of Universal, Aqsa, and other schools. And we are going to be engaging them on issues that matter to us, as well as to help support local candidates in the April elections. How many of you are from Chicago? Okay, so if you're regardless actually, if you're in the city or the suburbs, you have local elections coming up in April. In February, if you're a city resident, in February you'll be voting for mayor and for alderman. Very, very important. Turnout is tiny. There'll probably be like 20%, 30% turnout in these local elections. And so your vote counts far, far more than it counts in a presidential or a gubernatorial race. And then the runoffs are in April. And for suburbanites, your elections will be in April. You'll be electing many mayors and trustees and school board candidates and candidates across a bunch of different government bodies. So we are going to be engaging our volunteers in this work. And if you're interested, catch me afterward. I'd love to get you signed up so that we can do this. And then, of course, we're going to be directly endorsing and supporting candidates and helping them. And we've already helped a number of them navigate the process and get on the ballot. Now we will, inshallah, help them win or get close to winning in April. So those are for me, it's really important in this moment, right after an election, when people have witnessed what mashallah, Rashida and Ilhan and others have done across the country, what Abdulrahman did in Michigan, and the folks who are motivated locally, that this is the opportunity to not let the momentum go away. We have to build on it right away. We're just about 6 weeks out from the November election. And so let's build. 2020 is around the corner, right? And we don't need to wait until then. If we want to be effective in 2020, helping elect people up and down the ballot, we have to have a successful 2019. And I look forward to collaborating with you on doing that, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakumullahu khairan. Inshallah, we will now start the Q&A session. So our first question is for Dr. El-Sayed. The question is, you mentioned in your session yesterday that you and your campaign made a conscious decision to embrace your Muslimness, like by adding your wife onto every campaign ad, etc. How did you/do you balance catering to people's views while holding on to your identity, considering the amount of accommodations politics requires? This is also going on to other questions like how do we accommodate our views for like liberal/democratic views? How do we do that in politics?
So I don't think the question is a very good one, and I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I actually think they're very mutually inclusive. I think there's a moment right now that our community has to ask some very basic, some very tough questions about what it means to engage in politics in a secular, pluralistic society. Many of us will point to the evangelical Christian right and say, why are they trying to legislate their faith into the laws of this country? Isn't that wrong? Isn't that awful? But at the same time, in our community, we seem to want to do the same thing. And the question that I often ask is, what are the general principles of our faith that suggest that we should be people of justice and that we should seek to inculcate that justice into both the structures and the culture of our politics? There are going to be issues on which many of us disagree. But the point that I think we have to ask ourselves right now is, what is the responsibility that we have to maintain the kind of space within which anyone can practice their faith, and that means that anyone can practice no faith at all? What is our responsibility to that space? I would have a lot of conversations with some of the Imma in Michigan, and they would say, we disagree with your positions on you name the issue, and you can imagine what those issues are. And my point was always to say, my job is not to legislate anyone's faith. In fact, we all have seen what happens when people try and do that same thing and what it means for people like us. Rather, my job is to protect everyone's right to be and do as they choose to be and do. And then you all can have a conversation about what the best being and doing is. But our job in the civic space is to a broader sense of equity and justice and fair treatment under the law, not to make the mistake that the evangelical right has made, which is to try and legislate particulars into the system, because we wouldn't want somebody to do that to us. To give you a very clear example of it, I choose to put my face on the ground more than 30 times a day. A lot of folks would look at that and be like, why are you wasting your time with that? I don't think that matters in the world. But I would fight for my right to do that. And if I would fight for my right to do that, then somebody who doesn't have any faith at all has equal rights to fight for their choices and the choices that they make and their freedom to do those things, even if they may not be the things that I choose to do. We have to ask ourselves what it means to govern in a pluralistic, secular society, and what it means to read our values into the system without ever creating the kind of system that takes away people's rights, because we wouldn't want that done to us. The final point on that question is, I am who I am, and I'm not afraid of who I am. In fact, I would rather be who I am and lose than have one trying to be someone else. And I think we have a responsibility to engage that and to be proud of that. One of the things that's natural about humans is that humans are attracted to confidence. They're attracted to authenticity. You think about the people that you like, they're people who are just comfortable in their own skin. You don't like people who are apologizing for themselves all the time. It's kind of unnatural. Why do you keep doing that? And it's just like my mom said, right? If you can't ask people to believe in you unless you believe in yourself. And so for us, whether you're running for office, whether you're engaging politics, be comfortable and confident in who you are, and you will find that that human attraction happens. People are excited about people who are excited about what they're doing and why they're doing it.
All right, our next question for Abdelnasser Rashid. From my limited understanding, running for office entails essentially a full-time job, sometimes working your way up. So what are some ways someone with a career in another field can shore up their resume or get involved in local politics?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So some offices do require you to basically do this full time. When I ran for Cook County Commissioner, it's a fairly substantial office here in Illinois. I left my job at the Cook County Clerk's office in July and was a full-time candidate from July through November before starting work again this month. But that's not usually, for most positions, you don't have to. You could do it while you're working, while you're a student. So you could run for school board, actually, the folks for the elections coming up, right? You can run for school board, you can run for trustee, for park district, for community college board, and all of those do not require the same level of intensity as running for the higher office. And for the most part, running for state representative or state senator, you can also do while working. It does require more sacrifice the further up you go. And so my recommendation to you is look at what's available to you, look at what you're interested in, what issues you're most passionate about. And there isn't a rule that you can't run for office or can't serve in office. Most public servants, most elected officials have other work, right? There are some places where the job is a full-time job and they're getting paid a full-time salary, but in most cases, including our own state representatives and state senators in Springfield, are part-time legislators. They're part-time legislators. They often have to supplement their income by doing other work. And so, and that applies to the campaigning as well. You should be able to generally campaign without giving up your day job. And when you're ready, when you're going to run for something like Congress or something like that, then you'll usually be at the point where you can where you're going to be willing or able to actually put everything else on hold in order to do that. So start by looking at what's available to you locally. Look at what's coming up in 2019 and 2020. And explore it from there. I'm available to answer any questions. If you guys need to reach me, find me on empowersouthwest.com or add me on Facebook or something. If you have any specific questions about something that you'd like to run for and want to know what the expectation will be from you, what you'll need to put into it, I would be more than happy to provide guidance there as well.
Okay, and now the inevitable question for Dr. Sayed. How did your backgrounds in medicine and public health influence or inspire your political career?
So I'll tell you about the first time anybody who actually knew what they were talking about told me I should run for office. It was at my college graduation. And alhamdulillah, I was the valedictorian of my class, and I got to give the commencement speech. And that year at Michigan, the main speaker, who anybody actually went to go listen to that day, was not me. It was President Bill Clinton. And my dad sat me down and said, "Abdurrahman, I'm coming to this, but not to listen to you." I was like, "Thanks, Baba, appreciate that." So I gave my speech. President Clinton gives his speech. He said some really nice things about me in his speech. I think it is the first time my father clapped for me. And then afterwards, I'm sort of looking around and I see President Clinton and a group of people and sort of being surrounded. And so I didn't want to bother the man, so I started to walk out. And I feel a tap on my shoulder. Who do you think it is? It's Bill Clinton. So if you've ever met Bill Clinton, he has this incredible ability to stare through your soul. So Bill Clinton starts staring through my soul, and he asked me a question that very few people ask a graduating senior going to medical school, which is, "Son, why are you going to medical school?" And I looked at him, I was like, "Well, I'm brown and Muslim, that's just what we do." I didn't actually say that. I told him, "Look, I love people and I love science, and this is what I want to do." Now, I come from a household where both of my parents are engineers. They used to make fun of me for wanting to be a doctor. I was like the only Muslim household where my parents did not want me to be a doctor. My dad always used to joke that, you guys are just glorified mechanics. Like, we design the systems. You guys are just glorified mechanics, fixing the system when it goes wrong. I was like, that's fair, but our system was designed by God, so there's that. I told him I love people, I love science, and this is how I want to serve. And he said, you've got a gift for communicating. Maybe someday you'll run for office. I literally laughed out loud. I was, "Mr. President, I really appreciate you saying that, but I don't know if you saw my name. There are 11 letters in my first name, and that's just my first name." And he didn't even say, no, that's okay. He was like, "Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. You probably can't get elected." Look, I love people. That's why I went into healthcare. I used to spend a lot of my summers in Egypt, where in the 8 hours it would take us to get there, we travel about 10 years difference in life expectancy. The fact is, I could drive 25 minutes south from my suburban home to any neighborhood in Detroit and travel those same 10 years difference in life expectancy. And I want to do something about that problem. And that's why I went to healthcare, went into medicine. I did a PhD in public health, and I was ready to go until I came to appreciate that in the clinic, I could not actually solve the problems that I wanted to solve. And that's when I decided that I did not want to do a residency. And so I went into public health. I was a professor for a couple of years and realized that in a lot of ways, thinking about problems is not solving problems. So I left academia and became a health commissioner in the city of Detroit. And the work was really rewarding. But every time I wanted to solve a really big problem, like the fact that our city shuts off water on 17,000 homes a year, and there is no health without water, I'd run into the politics, that it just wasn't politically feasible right now for the politicians. And that's why I decided to run. My work in healthcare informs everything I believe about what our society ought to do for people. It's critical. But the question that I think the asker actually asked is this: I really want to run for office someday, but I want to go to medical school first. Should I do that? And I'd never wanted to run for office. I'll be honest with you, that was not in my path. I wanted to be a doctor. And I kept asking big questions about how I actually could solve the problems I wanted to solve, which ultimately led me to running for office. If you want to run for office, don't go to medical school. It's a very, very circuitous path. If you want to run for office, start getting engaged in politics. Learn a craft that allows you to do something and be something, and maybe that's medicine for you, fine. But if your goal is to be elected to office, that's a very different goal than wanting to take care of patients. If you want to take care of patients, go be a doctor. If you want to engage the work of politics, right, maybe that's not the best, most important path. And I want to speak finally to this. A lot of times in our community, there is this obsession with becoming a doctor. It's obsession, right? You talk to any parent and they'll say, success is my kid going to medical school. Why? There are 1.5 million things to do in the world. Why that one? And if you're doing it to scratch an itch that your parents have put there, guess what? The minute you start scratching that itch and you don't have an honest conversation with them, you're going to keep scratching that itch. Because after medical school is residency, and after residency is fellowship, and after fellowship you got to get that good attending job because you're $200,000 in debt. Then after that, you're comfortable in that life, you buy a big house, you got a nice car, you got to pay the bills, and you're stuck being a doctor for the rest of your life. And that's great for some people. But if that's not what you want in your life, don't do it. Why would you? I've always found that when you're honest with people, right, people see that. And if you really, truly, deeply want another path, show your parents why you're willing to work on that path. Show them why it matters to you, what you're willing to do for that. And they'll see it. Now, to the parents in the room, see it. If your kid doesn't want to be a doctor, don't force him to go to medical school. It doesn't make any sense. We've got so much talent in our community, and it's all locked out in mid-grade medical schools because most people don't even want to go to med school. So we've got to be honest about that. So for me, this was my path. For you, it might not be. Walk a path from A to B that is as linear as possible. Don't go to med school because you want to run for office. That's not what I did. I went to medical school, realized I wanted to solve a problem that I could not solve as a doctor, so I hopped a different path. Find your path, but be honest about what you want in your life. And if you're willing to be honest with your folks, I'm telling you, they'll come around. I'm telling you. And if not, I promise you, you reach out to me, I'll have a conversation with them. I promise.
Jazakumullah khairan. We have 2 minutes left for this quick question. So when you lost the election, were you depressed or really upset from the amount of work you put in?
Thank you for the question. It is a little heartbreaking to lose by 1%. I gotta admit, it would be a little unnatural not to feel like that some level of sadness. But we were incredibly energized by this outcome. There were 120,000 votes. We weren't supposed to hit the 60,000 mark and get anywhere near defeating the incumbent chairman of the party with someone like my background, or any Democrat. No Democrat was supposed to get this close. So, and look, I know enough about politics to know that many people have lost their first election. We were fully intending to win and working toward that goal. But you don't control the outcome. Allah controls the outcome. And so yes, was I sad? Of course I was sad, right? That evening, and we didn't know the results until the next morning because of how close it was. So we're refreshing everyone. In fact, the other main thing I was hearing from people was we're refreshing the page all night on the Sun-Times, Chicago Sun-Times website to see what the outcome was. So we were waiting, and it was so suspenseful. And then obviously, when you realize you're not, there is no way to overcome the deficit, then you accept it, and then we debrief. We think about what could have been done differently. You take pride in what was done well, and you move on and you build for the next one. So yeah, I mean, it'd be dishonest to say no, there was no sadness involved, but overwhelmingly it was being energized and motivated, right? If we had lost by just getting within 1%, it changes the dynamic, in terms of what you envision moving forward. So, thanks for the question.
I hate losing. I played sports my whole life, and I hate losing. But you learn a lot more, alhamdulillah, in losing than you do in winning. I would be lying to you if I said that I put 18 months of my life, everything I had, into something, and did not get my outcome. I mean, we got walloped. We knew within 2 hours that we had lost and conceded. The interesting thing was in the last month of the campaign, we had all the momentum. Anybody on the ground in Michigan would tell you we had all the momentum. And so even though we lost by a lot, give it 2 more weeks or even a month more, it might have been a different outcome. I learned a lot about myself and about politics and about the people around me in that race, and I've done it again. If you told me today what the outcome would have been, we're going to do that all over again, I would have done it over again. Because it's possible sometimes that you lose an election, but the outcome is generally a win. So I always say that I did not win, but I do think that there were a lot of wins for American politics, definitely a lot of wins for the Muslim community, and certainly a lot of wins for the people who engaged this work that came out of that campaign. So it is not on net a loss. That being said, we in our community sometimes we fear failure. And oftentimes we settle to win at a game we don't even want to play because we fear losing in the game that we really do. And one of the things that I think is really important is that people have seen people like Abdul El-Sayed and I and others run and lose, and that's okay. It's fine, because we'll be back at it. I know he'll run again, and if he doesn't, I'm gonna come over to Chicago and make him run again. And there are so many others who ran and lost who will run again. Inshallah, someday I'll run again. But the point of this is that we showed that it's okay to take a big risk, to swing for the fences and not necessarily hit a home run, and then come back and do it again. We need that in our community. And I'm really glad that young people are seeing that, right? That it's okay to lose, it's okay to fail if you've tried. And never having tried at all is probably the worst of the two.
Jazakallah khairan for joining us today. This concludes the end of our session.